Dear friends, welcome to my presentation on effective assessment. I hope you now have a clear picture of what an assessment is, different types of assessment and test items for each type. Through this presentation, you will be able to identify the purpose of assessment, will be able to construct an appropriate test item, to test different knowledge level and to design a rubric. Assessment is the process of defining, selecting, designing, collecting, analyzing, interpreting and using information to increase learners' learning and development. It's not a separate add-on activity, but an integral part of the teaching and learning process. Its purpose is to provide reliable information and feedback to improve and enhance the quality of teaching and learning. Assessment is process-oriented. Assessment enables learners to understand their abilities and improve their ways of learning. Assessment helps teachers to understand the performance of their learners so that suitable and timely measures can be taken. It also helps the parents to understand the performance of their wards and provide suitable support. Why should we assess? When to assess? What has to be assessed? And how to assess? Come, let's get into the details. First, let's see why we need an assessment. Assessment for learning, assessment of learning, assessment as learning. For learning, which is the formative assessment. Of learning, it can be used as a tool to measure the performance of a learner. We call this a summative assessment. As learning, here the learner uses it as a feedback. It helps him or her to reflect upon their learning. Formative assessment enables a faculty to get a clear picture of learners' knowledge, understanding and skills. This helps the faculty to provide feedback and suggestions to learners to improve their learning. The feedback given to learners must be a descriptive and definitely not in a single word as we see in the picture. Dylan William, a British educationalist and emeritus professor of educational assessment said, when teachers do formative assessment effectively, students learn at roughly double the rate than they do without it. Faculty should use formative assessment to check whether their instruction is in alignment with their learning. Faculty must select resources based on the different learning styles of learners. Faculty must also provide immediate feedback and the way forward. Summative assessment helps teachers to have a clear understanding of the learner's learning. It enables teachers to assess if the learning outcomes are attained. Summative assessment clearly demonstrates the competence and skill of learners. Using this assessment, the faculty can identify a range of alternative mechanisms to test the same learning outcome. Assessment as learning. It is completely in the learner's perspective. It involves learners to monitor their own progress, reflect on their learning and work towards learning goals. When should we assess? Placement assessment determines learners' level of understanding at the beginning of instruction. Formative assessment is done during instruction to monitor the progress of learning. Diagnostic assessment, it's also done during the instruction. The aim of the diagnostic assessment is to determine the cause of persistent learning problems and to formulate a plan for remedial action. Summative assessment is done at the end of the instruction to assess the achievement. What has to be assessed? We should assess if the learning outcome is achieved or not. We should assess what we teach and we should teach what we want to assess as suggested by Richard Felder. How to assess? To assess, faculty must have good questioning skill. It's an art of asking right questions in the right way and faculty must cultivate this art. There are several test items which can be used for assessing. but the faculty must choose the appropriate tool to assess different levels of knowledge. In-class questioning. This is a wonderful tool to check if the learners are in sync with the faculty during the class. We shall see the PPPB stages of questioning. First, pose. Pose the question to the whole group. Then, pause. All learners are allowed to think of the answer. Pounce. To name a learner to answer a question and listen to their answer. Finally, bounce. Here we discuss, stretch and challenge the whole group before confirming the answer. Reward correct answers and incorrect answers should not be ridiculed either by the teacher or by the learners. The test items used for assessment can be classified into two categories, supply type and selection type. We shall see them in detail. To test the ability of writing, organizing ideas and thoughts, creativity, evaluation of ideas and problem solving, supply type test item can be used. Completion, single answer, short answer, structured essay and numerical problem solving are the various test items under supply type category. Completion and single answer questions are statements given in an incomplete form. They are useful to test a learner's knowledge on facts, principles, theories and interpretation of data. The question should be direct, clearly stated and most importantly should have only one answer. Short answer questions are open-ended and mostly used to assess the basic knowledge and understanding. The question has to be simple, clear and unambiguous. The scope of answer must be limited by the use of words such as list, give reasons, define, etc. The important thing while framing short answer question is that it should be interpreted in the same way by all learners. For example, what's a refrigerator? This is a vague question which should be avoided. Learners can answer it in different ways. One answer can be, it's a gadget to store vegetables and prevent them from spoilage. Another answer may be, it's a gadget that works on the principle of refrigeration. Yet another answer could be, it's a gadget which maintains the required temperature to prevent food items from getting spoiled. Essay questions. Learners are expected to write reasonably elaborate answers. These type of questions can be used to check for Bloom's Taxonomy levels. Understand, apply, analyze, evaluate and create. Essay questions can be improved by structuring properly and specifying the marking scheme. It is possible to break the open-ended question into a series of small tasks and related questions and making them clear and unambiguous. Here are a couple of examples. Answer should not exceed 200 words or with a neat diagram describe the working of a 4-stroke engine. To test higher order thinking skills and complex learning outcomes, numerical problem solving questions can be framed. The next category of test item is selection type. As the name suggests, the learner has to select the answer from the given options. This type is used to test the learner to recognize correct answers, to test the learner's ability to check the correctness of a statement and the ability to differentiate objects, words and symbols. Multiple choice questions, MCQ, true or false, also called as alternate response and matching type. These test items fall under this category of selection type. The terms associated with MCQ are stem, key and distractors. Stem is the question. The question must be direct or an incomplete statement. Key is the answer. There must be one and only one correct answer while the remaining options are called distractors. Distractors must be reasonable and should act as distractors for higher ability learners and attractors for lower ability learners. MCQ must test important information. There could be 3 or 4 distractors. STEM must be concise and unambiguous. The STEM has to be designed in such a way that Even without seeing the options, the learner should be able to give the correct answer. True or false? This selection type test item is used to test learners' ability to recognize correctness of a statement, identify relationship, attitudes, values and beliefs. It can also be used to test the ability of the learner in identifying cause and effect relationship. This test item is more suitable when only two alternatives are possible, where only one response is correct. It should be designed in such a way that it should have only one central and significant idea. It should be very precise so that it can be judged as absolutely true or absolutely false. Matching. It's just a modification of MCQ. Instead of the response being listed under each individual stem, they are listed in two columns. It can be used to test the remember level of Bloom's taxonomy. Matching questions should have more options to choose from and the responses should be homogeneous ones. Blueprint or table of specification. Blueprint is a map for an assessment which ensures all aspects of the curriculum and educational domains are covered. Blueprint links assessment to learning objectives. The blueprint is also called table of specification. Its purpose is to identify the achievement domains that needs to be measured and to ensure a fair and representative sample of questions. Teachers cannot measure every topic or objective and may not be able to ask every question that they might wish to ask. Table of specifications allows the teacher to construct a test that focuses on the key areas and weights based on their importance. Steps to create table of specifications are choosing the measurement goals and domains, breaking the domain into key independent parts like concepts, terms, procedures and applications. Rubrics. It's a learning and assessment tool. It articulates the performance tasks by listing the criteria and the levels of quality. Rubrics clearly indicates achievement criteria across all the components of any kind of learner's work, namely written, oral or visual. Why do we need rubrics? Rubrics help teachers. Teachers can provide learners with feedback that is clear, directed and focused on ways to improve learning. Rubrics will help to reduce the time spent on grading. Rubrics helps learners too. Learners can focus on the work instead of guessing what the teacher wants. Learners can concentrate on completing assignments in line with the set expectations. It helps in self and peer reflection. There are two types of rubrics, holistic rubrics and analytic rubrics. Holistic rubric is a single criterion rubrics, one-dimensional, used to assess participants' overall achievement on an activity or item based on predefined achievement levels. Performance descriptions are written in paragraphs and usually in full sentences. It works well for summative assessment. Analytic rubrics are two-dimensional rubrics with levels of achievement as columns and assessment criteria as rows. It helps to assess learners' achievements based on the multiple criteria using a single rubric. Different weights can be assigned to different criteria. This type of rubrics proves extremely good for formative assessment. Essential parts of rubrics are task description, the task which the learners are expected to perform. Example, essay, oral presentation. Performance levels describes the levels of mastery over the assigned task. Example, exceed expectation, meets expectation, doesn't meet expectation. Scale gives a specific grade or point to the performance level. Example, 4, 3, 2, 1. Components. Components are the criterion that a learner must satisfy to complete the assignment or task. Example, types of skills, knowledge, etc. Performance descriptor, description of the performance quality. They are the components or dimensions required at each level of mastery. A sample rubric is shown here. Team assignment is the task descriptor. The performance levels could be excellent, good, satisfactory, marginal pass, and so on. The scale can be defined either A, B, C, D or 4, 3, 2, 1 according to our convenience. In this example, participation is the component. And you can also see the detailed performance descriptors. Rubrics for oral presentation. The next 4 slides gives the rubric for an oral presentation. Here, the task description is oral presentation. The performance levels are classified as excellent, very good, good and satisfactory. The corresponding scale points are 5, 4, 3 and 1. In the slide, we can see the first component, content, and the rubric specified for each performance level. If the presenter has variety and if the content is appropriate for the task, he or she can be graded as excellent and 5 points can be awarded. If the presenter focuses primarily on relevant content and sticks to the topic, he or she can be graded as very good with a scale of 4 points. But if the presenter includes some irrelevant content and wanders off the topic, the performance level can be graded as good and 3 points can be allotted. Rather, if the presenter says practically nothing and focuses primarily on irrelevant content, then he or she should be graded as satisfactory with just 1 point for the content. Here we can see the component of delivery for the oral presentation. If the presenter delivers the message in a confident, poised, enthusiastic fashion and volume and rate varies to add emphasis and interest, the presenter can be awarded excellent with 5 points. Whereas if the volume is not too low or too loud, then the presenter can be graded as very good with 4 points. If the volume is too low or too loud, he or she should be awarded a performance level of good with 3 points. Whereas if the volume is so low, the presenter can be graded as satisfactory with 1 point. The next component of oral presentation is organization. If the message is overtly organized, then the presenter can be awarded as excellent with 5 points. If the message is organized, then it can be awarded as very good with 4 points. If the organization of the message is mixed up and random, good will be the performance level with scale of 3 points. And if the message is so disorganized we cannot understand most of the message, then the performance level will be satisfactory with just 1 point. The next component of oral presentation is creativity. If the presentation is very original, then it can be graded as excellent with 5 points. Some originality is apparent, then it can be awarded very good with 4 points. If there is little or no variation, it can be awarded as good with 3 points. And if the content is repetitive with little or no variety, then it can be awarded as satisfactory with just 1 point. The last component of the oral presentation will be length of the presentation. If it is completed within 2 minutes of the allotted time, it can be awarded as excellent with 5 points. If the presenter takes within 4 minutes of the allotted time, then it can be awarded as very good with 4 points. If the presenter takes within 6 minutes of the allotted time, it can be graded as good with 3 points. And if it is too long or too short, that is 10 or more minutes above or below the allotted time, then the presentation will be awarded only satisfactory performance level with just 1 point. Here we can see the rubrics for problem solving. The task descriptor is problem solving. The performance levels are high proficiency, proficiency, some proficiency and no or limited proficiency. The scale points are 5, 4, 2 and 0. The components are defining a problem, developing a plan to solve the problem, specifications, interpreting findings and solving the problem. And we can see the detailed performance level descriptors for each criterion. This is called the triangle of effective learning. In conclusion, from all the modules you have learned so far, it is understood that learning outcomes are to be clearly defined. Suitable strategy has to be adopted to achieve the learning outcome. Assessment and appropriate tool for testing the learning are to be identified and timely feedback to be given in order to achieve effective learning. This is the summary of effective learning. These are my references. I would like to sign off with a quote by a great American writer, Miss Alice Wellington Rollins. The test of a good teacher is not how many questions he can ask his pupils that they will answer readily, but how many questions he inspires them to ask which he finds it hard to answer. Thank you for watching.